So Path of Exile 2 will feature 12 classes and they all look very interesting. Lots of big synergies and new mechanics that may be a bit overwhelming for first-time players. We have 8 of the 12 revealed until now, so to better help you choose your starting class, here's a full breakdown of all the ones we know so far. Also, I'm starting a giveaway for some early access keys, so if you want to enter, just make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment down below. The winners will be announced ahead of the December early access. But let's get started with the warrior. This class is perfect for anybody who wants a big, beefy character that wields giant weapons and can fight in close range with overwhelming force. This is somewhat of a new class launching in PoE 2, a strength-based character very similar to the Marauder from the first PoE game, but with some extra twists that sets it apart. Now, the warrior's signature weapon is the mace, which lets you focus a lot on slam and stun-like attacks from early on. But unlike the Marauder from before, the warrior skills have a lot more mobility baked into them, which means you're not forced in place to unleash your strongest attacks. This class also excels at applying stuns, which goes perfectly with the revamped boss mechanics in PoE 2 that makes boss CCs a lot more reliable, which you can then take advantage of to unleash super powerful charged attacks that oftentimes may have longer wind-ups. Now, the warrior is also a rather versatile class, offering a good range of both single target and AoE attacks via skills such as the Earthquake or Sunder. Plus, in the past, strength-based classes' starter nodes were very close to those of the axes, maces, and staves, giving ample options to branch out into different weapon playstyles. Now, in terms of ascendancies, information on these are sparse and sometimes quite outdated, but we do know that the warrior as well as all the other classes were set to have 3 different ascendancy classes. But taking a guess here, it's likely that some of these will focus more on defenses, improving armor, and even resistances. Others may focus on dealing fire damage via abilities like the Infernal Cry, and if the past game is of any indication, there's bound to be a more glass cannon ascendancy in there too for the warrior. Moving on to number 2, we have the Sorceress. If you really enjoy that classic spellcaster mage role that uses elemental powers to destroy its enemies, then this is exactly what you're looking for. Wielding the power of fire, ice, lightning, and chaos, the Sorceress is actually an offshoot of the Witch from the first PoE game that basically they took the Elementalist playstyle from that and turned it into its whole new class. Now, your main attribute here is going to still be intelligence, and one of the main weapons is going to be the staff. However, it's likely that in the full game we may see other weapon types, including maybe even wands. A big change to weapons for the Sorceress is that staffs can also cast free spells which cost no mana and will replace your basic auto attacks, meaning that if you were ever left out of mana, you're still going to be able to shoot mage-related spells. Now, because of the change in PoE 2, a Sorceress can also take advantage of the new dual specialization system to focus on multiple damage types, and there are many synergies that will further buff that. For example, past gameplay showed debuffing enemies with a Frost Bomb, using a Mana Tempest to buff yourself, and then hurling a Comet onto the target would deal a huge burst of damage. However, there are other options for lightning as well. Also, because of that dual specialization, you can pretty much have 2 sets of weapons specializing in different damage types and even assign different skills to different weapons, allowing you to more seamlessly swap between them, but also take advantage to any buffs that they may provide. Again, Diablo 4 Sorcerer players should feel right at home over here, but with plenty enough changes compared to the class over there. Moving on to number 3, we have the Ranger. Now, if you enjoy a fast-moving, arrow-shooting character that can easily disengage and wipe out large groups of enemies with volleys of arrows, then this is the perfect fit for you. Rangers are a dex-based class that primarily use bow and arrow. However, in Path of Exile 2, there's a lot more in terms of synergies between your skills. Plus, you get a lot of extra mobility via skills such as the Vault Escape. Now, we've seen some of these synergies in action, including the Lightning Arrow and the Lightning Rod. You can easily lodge some of these rods into the ground, and if you add a multiple projectiles gem to the skill, you can easily get a bunch of deadly bursts of electricity at the enemy's feet that will shock nearby targets and even trigger stun-inducing electrocutions for a short duration. You can also use Sniper's Mark on targets to curse enemies if you're looking for a more single target approach, gain bonus damage and even guaranteed critical hits, and then take advantage of that to curse the targets and have your skills such as the Rain of Arrows last for much longer or even deal more damage. But there's also options for poison builds and vine builds. You can use abilities such as the Vine Arrow and the Toxic Growth basically to slow enemies and keep them for long periods of time in poison clouds. And you can further buff the poison damage as well to unleash it at max poison stacks for an even higher extra burst of damage. Another unique aspect of the Ranger is that it also features a mount. You can take advantage of that to make your skills not have any movement penalty, which can be quite overpowered. Plus, the raw mount can also attack on its own when you're not on its back. However, there is also a huge drawback. If enemies manage to stun you while mounted, you'll be knocked off and it takes a lot of time to get back up, putting you in a lot of danger. Moving on to the fourth one, we have the Monk. Now this is your int/dex attribute class, a melee fighter that uses a quarterstaff as a signature weapon, specializing more on mobility over brute strength. So if you really enjoy this playstyle as well as a mix of magic provided by extra freezes and aligning mechanics, this is what you should go for. Now an interesting mechanic of the Monk is the killing mark. If enemies go to low enough HP values, they will get marked, letting you execute a killing palm against them, which will provide power charges to you. And these power charges will interact with your other abilities. For example, once enough power charges stack up on you, you can go ahead and unleash a much more powerful version of the Falling Thunder that also creates a ripple damage effect to fully obliterate everything it touches in a larger area. Monks also have excellent CC and AoE potential via frost spells such as the Glacial Cascade and Wave of Frost. This gives you a lot of ways to freeze targets in place with your attacks and then even cause those enemies to shatter with your other abilities such as the Glacial Cascade. Hitting these enemies while frozen will provide an extra source of AoE damage. Plus, a lot of these abilities, such as the Wave of Frost, also have mobility baked right into them, letting you reposition yourself out of harm's way while unleashing the deadly attack. And just like the Warrior, this is yet another class that fully takes advantage of the boss CC revamp mechanic in PoE 2. If you played games like Elden Ring in the past, you probably already are familiar with the internal meters that, once filled, will apply that crowd control on the target. So the same works here too, but the more you apply that, the more that internal meter threshold will increase, so over time you will see that time needed for application gradually increase. But just like other classes, monks will also feature 3 different ascendancies, focusing on different aspects of the class and its mechanics. The fifth one is the Druid. Now this one is pretty self-explanatory. If you enjoyed the hybrid playstyle, having the spell power of a sorcerer with the added brutality of a warrior, but with a cool shape-shifting twist, this is the class for you. The Druid features many creature forms that you can turn into, and we've already seen a few of them, including the bear and the werewolf. Now, Diablo 4 players should again feel themselves right at home with many similarities to the Druid from over there. Namely, your skills will automatically switch to the appropriate form when you use them. For example, casting a bear skill will automatically shapeshift you into a bear form and cast that skill right away. And the same goes for the human form. Being a strength/intelligence class, druids are extremely versatile and will take advantage of the dual specialization system added with Path of Exile 2. Not only in setting weapon loadouts for different sets of spells, but also for the fact that druid elemental abilities can interact with the shapeshift form, which I think is what makes the Druid of PoE 2 to set itself apart. A really cool example of this is how the Druid can form a volcano with one of its abilities in the human form, but if you then shapeshift to the bear form, you can use slam attacks to cause that volcano to make even more projectiles emerge out of it, which in turn offers a huge burst of damage. Later on, abilities such as Ferocious Roar can further buff the slam with a second aftershock, while skills such as the Rampage can continuously slam the ground while consuming your available range, resulting in some pretty wild ways to obliterate your enemies around you. So a pure hybrid with a somewhat higher skill ceiling than most other classes, but every bit satisfying from the looks of it. At number 6, we have the Witch, the other pure spellcaster type of the game with a bigger focus on summons and chaos magic. So if you prefer to have a dark mage, focus more on necromancy playstyle, summoning armies of undead while you cast your own skills and empower them, then this is the class for you. Your primary attribute with this is intelligence, meanwhile the signature weapon is going to be the scepter. But you don't just have the mana as a resource, you also get a secondary one called the Spirit. And Spirit is what lets you summon your minions. The more Spirit you get from leveling and from gear, the more you can increase your army size with more undead around you. There are many permanent minion types, from ice mages to sniper archers, brutes that can stun enemies, and way more you can select from the minion screen. Plus, there are many big quality of life changes here too compared to the previous game if you come from it, namely your minions can also auto-revive and you also don't need to summon them manually. Additionally, you also get access to temporary summons, which you can raise from the corpses of your fallen enemies with skills such as Unearth. A cool thing about minions though is that you have full control over them, so you can issue commands where they have to go, who to attack, what skills to use, and even have them open doors or treasures for you. And you can make some interesting synergies to buff your minions and even have them cast powerful skills. For example, you can sacrifice some of them to enrage the remaining part of your army, or have mages drop lightning strikes where your other minions have fallen. And for those of you who may have enjoyed the corpse explosion mechanic from Diablo 4, there's something similar to that here as well. You can pretty much make your minions also explode for extra damage. There's one very interesting mechanic I'm very excited about here. There is a gem in the game for the Witch which lets you capture enemy spirits and basically turn them into your own minions. So let's say you find a very powerful foe out in the wild. If you capture it with that gem, you can just make it yours and summon it instead of your regular minions. Moving on to number 7, we also have the Mercenary. Now this is a very interesting twist on ranged damage. It uses crossbows, which compared to the ranger bow is pretty much instantaneous, and you also have multiple firing modes to choose between, because in Path of Exile 2 you have many different crossbow options that mimic the playstyle of shotguns, sniper rifles, and even assault rifles. So if that almost shooter-like precise gameplay from range is what you're looking for, then Mercenary is the class for you. Now this may be the best class archetype to take advantage of the WASD movement in Path of Exile 2, though pretty much every other class can also use it, so rest assured you're not going to be limited just to this. But a unique mechanic of the Mercenary is that they can switch between different ammo types. So for example, we have armor piercing ammo, which is excellent at passing through enemies as well as destroying armor. Then there's incendiary, which is more suited for single target. The closer you are to the enemy, the more hits you can get in, which will set the enemies on fire. We also have permafrost though. The burst shots here will chill and potentially even freeze enemies in place. And like I said, synergies are everything about this game, so you can then switch back to your armor piercing rounds and you can pretty much cause all those frozen targets to shatter, dealing even more damage to enemies around them. Another great one is attachments, another unique mechanic in which you can add to the underside of your crossbow extra ways to launch new attacks, such as grenade launchers. So we have a few options of those, including flash grenades, normal grenades, so if you want extra stuns or extra damage, you have the option for that. Or oil grenades that can slow enemy movements and even make it much easier for you to set them on fire with the burst shots. And I find it really awesome that crossbows, especially automatic ones, can overheat when shooting too fast, and you can use that mechanic to also power up your grenades to basically get more incendiary damage. But between that and having a secondary crossbow with its own firing modes and attachments, you can really make some wild combinations here to take down enemies in cool ways. Such as, for example, having the armor break on. A great synergy here is provided by armor piercing ammo with a sniper rifle power shot. So if you break an enemy's armor and then hit it with a power shot, this deals a huge amount of damage and can even stun enemies, so making it an excellent single target choice against bosses. And finally, we have the Huntress, probably the least we know of any of the classes, but it's another dexterity-based class. If you really enjoy a more dexterous warrior using a spear and a shield with more mobility and AoE, then this is the one for you. The Huntress focuses on a combination of both close and ranged combat via the Spear signature weapon. Now, a really cool playstyle for the Huntress is via Storm Spear. This lets you throw an empowered spear that splits into multiple bolts of lightning that hits enemies in range. Kind of fits a Thor playstyle of sorts, except that you don't use a hammer for it, but it looks really flashy and really awesome for almost like a warrior archetype. Now, some spears will provide bonus buffs when engaging or disengaging from enemies, encouraging you to constantly be on the move, going in and out of enemies' face. Skills such as the puncture will almost instantly jump to the target, giving you a great option for gap closing. Additional skills like Whirlwind Slash are excellent at creating a damaging vortex around you, so the more you use it, the stronger it gets, providing a huge damage breakout when you get out of it. But Huntress doesn't lack in AoE either. Like I said, you've got plenty of abilities for that, such as the Blazing Lance, which will cause a set of firewalls to appear on its track. But you can even follow up with a second Blazing Lance, which will cause the first set of firewalls to spread out in each direction. However, there are other options in there for other ways to just make a lot of spears emerge on the battlefield. And yeah, that's pretty much it with all the current classes we know so far. A rather quick breakdown for you to just go ahead and better decide which one fits perfectly for you. Obviously, at some point you may want to play with all of them, as obviously all of them have something very interesting in terms of abilities or unique combos. But that is pretty much it for now. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.